Everyone joining in. We'll get started in a couple of minutes here as we let folks join in. As you're joining in, would love to use the chat and maybe just quickly share what brings you here today, what company you're with, what you're hoping to learn, and maybe where you're calling from. Awesome. We have folks from all over the country and in Canada as well. Cool. And as we're having folks join in, looks like we're quick housekeeping items. So feel free to use the chat throughout the session for any questions. We will have a couple of folks monitoring the chat to make sure that we can answer a lot of these questions at the end of the session. Um, we will be recording the session as well. And after this, we will share the slides and the recording as well. So super excited, and it's something that hopefully everyone in the audience can refer to after this webinar as well. Cool. We can get started in maybe like another 1 or 2 minutes as we let folks finish coming in. Cool. Looks like we have a good initial critical mass here, so we can go ahead and get started. So, a big thank you for everyone in the audience today and to our amazing panelists. We can maybe go ahead and start off with quick introductions from the audience, and then I can kind of talk through some housekeeping things before we jump in. But Ashley, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ashley. I have started a few food brands, my last one being Spudsy. I sold Spudsy last October. I'm the current CEO of Sprinkle CPG, which is the sister company to Sprinkles Cupcakes. I helped them launch their CPG line in Walmart, Target, Costco, and other major retailers around the country. And I'm very passionate about starting and launching and scaling food and beverage brands that now I want to help other brands do it too. So I created a platform called Shelf Made that early stage and scaling food brands could live on and get the connections and education and expertise they need to do just that, launch and scale their brands. And today we have we just hit 2,100 members in the community. So it's becoming a nice little community that I'm super excited about.
Awesome. Yeah, super cool. David.
Yeah, Akash, thank you for having me. My name's David Hansell. I'm a CPA, senior manager here at Sickich. We work with a variety of CPG companies, all the way from the early stage, few million, all the way upwards to the 100 million plus. I don't know how, but I've somehow been doing this for almost 15 years. How that happened, I don't know. But with that, we get an opportunity to work with a variety of companies. And there's always times where things are good, things are great, and trade spend kind of gets backburnered. But as the economy kind of tightens, we always see kind of the need for tighter analysis, growth, and understanding. And look forward to diving into that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And Cole, our third panelist, seems like he may be having some travel delays, but Cole, if you can hear me, do you want to go ahead and give a quick intro? If not, we'll get started and hopefully he joins in a minute. Okay, cool. And yeah, I can give a brief intro on myself. So my name is Akash. I'm one of the founders and CEO at Glimpse. We're an AI platform automating the deductions management process for consumer brands. We use AI from everything from pulling in data to actually fighting claims and getting money back. And yeah, I'm super excited for us to all be together. In this panel today, we have all of the relevant experience from the tech and AI side, from the brand building side, and the finance and accounting side. So it should be a really exciting conversation, bringing us to our core theme for today, which is how we are automating, how we can optimize and automate the back office with AI for CPG brands heading into 2026. And our goal here really is that we can impart some key lessons on where AI could be useful today, use cases of AI from both the finance and back office perspective and also the brand building perspective, where operations and finance can be optimized and how we can help increase profits and bring money back into your bank account. Um, we'll cover a couple of key topics today, but the goal is to really keep it pretty casual and maximize the learnings we have with this group coming together. Um, but yeah, and then I mentioned the housekeeping items, but yeah, please feel free to use the chat with any questions, comments, thoughts, and yeah, we can go ahead and jump in. Before we go into the first topic, in the chat, I know we have a lot of folks from all over here, but would love to maybe just understand quick familiarity with AI. So can everyone in the chat and the audience maybe mention if they've used any AI tools in their business, how maybe their familiarity with ChatGPT, just anything kind of along those lines, so we can get a gut check of the audience today. Cool. But yeah, just sort of jumping in, what the big impetus for this meeting today at the start of October and Q4 2025 is the big AI imperative for consumer goods. And one thing that I've been hearing talking to brands every day is the number one priority right now is figuring out ways to improve efficiency and reduce costs. And there's a huge opportunity to be an early adopter with AI. We're seeing, with folks onboarding with Glimpse, a 3 to 5% margin improvement. And right now, AI is everywhere. Would love to, maybe do a quick fire with the panelists, but maybe Ashley, if you want to start, would love to understand, in building brands, maybe Spudsy most recently, like how is AI relevant to you guys in your business?
Yeah, I think so for me, I personally just started using AI the last year. But when it comes to like reducing cost, I guess I can speak to that. And for me, like having all of these startup businesses, like there's a ton of fees, obviously, like going through these distributor unknown costs, which you guys help with. Trade spend's another huge thing where like I lost so much money from not understanding my trade spend and my margins. Those were two really the biggest like things that I like as a brand, I wish I would have understood better. Because Spudsy was my third brand, it really took me two brands to understand like the importance of margins, trade spend, working with these distributors and understanding their deductions before I was able to fight those things.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And David, I know you work with tons of different brands of all different stages, different back offices, etc. Would love to understand a little bit about how you've been thinking about AI and in your practice.
Yeah, the use of AI, I'm real big on taking your existing tech stack and figuring out how to use AI to maximize its output. So we work with a variety of accounting solutions, QuickBooks, NetSuite, Bill.com, No Glimpse, for example. And I'm a big believer that, say, for example, we produce monthly financials. An exercise that we used to have to do is we'd have to do a detailed dive, we'd have to put a narrative together, understand the trends and volume. But now we could take some of the outputs from the existing systems, run it through a Copilot or a Chat GPT, and get it into a meaningful narrative format so that our time and effort is analyzing, not preparing. And I think that's the greatest opportunity in AI space right now is get yourself out of the prep phase and more focus on the back end, the review, the value add for both, from our standpoint for our companies, but for anybody internally, understanding where some of the opportunities and losses have occurred.
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a ton of sense. And it's something that we're seeing every day with brands. I guess kind of tying that back, Ashley, I know you mentioned that you started using AI in the past year and things like margins and trade spend were top of mind. How did your
Mhm.
team kind of go about evaluating where AI could be useful versus not? And yeah, if you have any thoughts there.
I think David's probably the AI expert because like my team, like in the last year, we just started like implementing AI like with Glimpse and programs like this. I'm not the AI expert. I'm the brand building expert. So anything AI, I'm gonna let David speak to. But as far as brand, like I'm here to answer whatever.
Awesome.
I'm the
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I'm the accidental expert. I think I always like to joke is
Passing.
I think I'm inherently lazy, right? And if there's an opportunity that can take some of the busy work and the legwork out of the mix, that's how AI is kind of just naturally involved in what we do. But excuse me, specifically within the CPG space, the amount of time that we were taking to compile BOL, shipping records, invoices, compiling them, cross-referencing them against a remittance. I mean, by the time you get to that end product, your brain is shot and you can't even step back and think, wait, is this deduction even valid? Now with tools like Glimpse, we can have that information data put together so that we can look at it and say, oh, this makes no sense. But if I had to do this all manually, time and resources, we probably couldn't get to it.
100%. I 100% agree with
Def
that. And like once it all starts compounding on each other and you're 2 years in and you realize you have an issue, that's when you have a big issue. So the fact that these brands starting in 2025, 2026 are able to implement it from day one is absolutely crucial.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, Ashley, would love to understand from the brand building perspective. It seems, it's something that even me as a founder of my own business, the back office is something that, is not always necessarily prioritized, et cetera. In terms of key priorities, looking maybe with your past businesses or even now as you're building Shelf Made, Sprinkles, et cetera, as you
Mhm.
think about top line growth, et cetera, where are you sort of investing resources and thinking about um, where the business could grow?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like where you're focusing. Like what, I guess what these brands are focused on. Are they focused on getting in stores? Or are they focused on growing online? And I mean, if they're focused on getting in stores, like I try to build out a program to support the retailer to grow our top line. If they're focused on direct to consumer and Amazon, then it's how do I partner with the right Amazon agency and figure out my right Amazon spend and do TikTok shop and Facebook and ads and all of those things. So I think it's really dependent on how you're building your business.
Yeah, definitely. No, that makes a ton of sense. And kind of penciling into that point around partnering with the retailers to drive top line growth. Have you, I guess, and maybe this is something that David, you can answer as well, in terms of the back office today, like the trade promotions, et cetera, what are some of the biggest challenges on that side of your business?
I mean, a lot of the retailers, I mean, some of them you could hit your 18 to 20% trade spend, right? Which is like as a new brand, I feel like you should probably be around there. It some retailers like the Targets of the world, like we're having a hard time even getting promotions accepted. Kroger's another one where we have getting a problem getting promotions accepted. Walmart's another one, where we're not even really, we have to get creative of like how we're going to invest in these retailers because we're not hitting the trade spend in some of them because they basically you need to hit a certain velocity and threshold and revenue for them to want to give you certain trade spend opportunities.
Definitely. And David, on your end, coming from the finance and accounting side, as these brands, as your clients are sort of scaling growth, committing to more trade spend, et cetera, what is that relationship, I guess, between finance, accounting, and the sales and trade side? And where are some of those big bottlenecks today?
Yeah, I think when you're a high growth company, everybody naturally stays in their lane. You know, operations is pushing ops, sales is pushing sales, finance is staying in finance. And for a company to be successful, everybody needs to be aligned. I think the number of companies that we see where the sales and the ops and the finance accounting team are all operating independently, it's very challenging, especially say, for example, you get a remittance with a promotional credit. How do we know that's valid? How do we know that there's a promo counter that supports that? How do we know that the promo amount's correct? If there is any shipping or damages, are we getting that feedback from ops? So I think by focusing on train spend holistically, I think it forces these three parties and departments together, and it just better aligns kind of where the company is and that go forward planning. And Akash, kind of going back to Glimpse, having that central platform where everybody can see everything and have that visibility, it gets a company speaking as one.
Definitely. That's, a big impetus of why we even started Glimpse and the problem we're trying to solve. And this slide is a really great example in terms of what we've seen in the industry. Anywhere upwards of up to 5% of top line can be lost to invoice discrepancies, unauthorized deductions, reconciliation failures, etc. And a lot of the steps in the process are incredibly manual and time consuming with silos across different teams. And one of the things we've been thinking about at Glimpse in terms of like AI in the back office is what are some of those highest time functions, like pulling remittances from retailers, understanding what the deductions might mean, are they tied to trade spend or supply chain, and putting that all into one place to really sort of optimize that back office and lead to revenue growth in 2026. So no, that's definitely super great insights. And maybe I'll start with you for this question, David. Right now, in terms of the, um, you know, accounting processes and closing the books at the end of every month for a CPG brand, where are the biggest time sinks in that process? And if 10 hours a week was brought back for your business, for your timing, where would you kind of reallocate that timing?
Yeah, exactly. I think the remittance process, the credit memo remittance process is definitely where the time is sunk. I think matching all the documents, understanding where they are, getting them in the system, the bank records, so on and so forth. So I think with a solid solution in place, I mean, we've seen a 50% reduction in close time. And from there, that then says, okay, from an FP&A standpoint or the accounting standpoint, where can we put this time? Can we put it into deduction dispute? Can we put it into connecting with the sales team to have better sales calendars and promo counters in place? So you get positioned into a forward-looking role rather than arrears. Because unfortunately, that's yesterday's data, and the high growth space need to be current.
Definitely. And yeah, I'll kind of pose a similar question to you, Ashley, as a founder of a brand wearing many hats across different functions. If 3 to 5% of your top line came back into your bank account, where would you reallocate those types of funds to help grow your business?
Probably on the marketing side, I would say.
Definitely. And you kind of mentioned earlier tied to trade spend, et cetera, and marketing spend, et cetera. Like right now, what are some of those areas that you think brand founders should be investing into if they can get their back office in check and increase that profitability?
Like marketing wise, what they should be investing into. Um,
Hmm.
Again, I feel like it depends on if they're a retailer DTC brand. If they're a retail brand, I mean, they could think of creative out of the box ways to market the program versus just doing like TPRs or off shelves. Maybe they do a shipper program or they think of creative ways to get off of the shelf. Is there merchandisers that they can partner with to put clip strips in different areas of the store that maybe their consumer doesn't shop? So, and then the same with direct to consumer online. It's where do you want to lean into? Do you want to lean into Instagram and ads there, or influencer campaigns, or Amazon or TikTok shop? So we're depending on where they want to focus. Those are just a couple things that I would think through.
Definitely. That makes a ton of sense. And, kind of maybe shifting gears a little bit, but Ashley, another question for you. As you've been building the Shelf Made community, I know you mentioned that 2,100 members. What are
Mhm.
things that have been top of mind for them as they've been scaling? 'Cause since you know, are able to engage with so
Yeah.
many brand builders.
Yeah, I think it's right now the community is really split. I would say half the community is 1 to 10 million in revenue, the other half is sub a million. And the biggest pain points that I'm seeing, well, one, the biggest pain point is raising money. Like, and I know how hard that is to raise money, especially as a sub $10 million brand. Like these investors are like PEVC wise, they want to see like proof of concept. And even at $10 million, like that's still not proof of concept for a lot of them. So that's one struggle is having a really hard time raising money, getting into retail now. So my first brand I started in 2014, it was a protein cookie brand called Buff Bake. And I think about how easy, I don't want to say easy because I don't take no for an answer. So like I'm not easy. But it was easier to get into these retailers. Now I feel like it's so difficult. So a lot of people in the community are having a hard time just figuring one, getting into retail and like developing the strategy to get into retail. I've made a couple mistakes there too. I've gone into thousands of doors in 1 year, which I do not suggest doing. I tell everyone to like start small, build a regional plan, like start in one area, dive deep, figure out your data story, and then expand. So raising money, getting into retail and their team. So I think a lot of people want to hire like these big titles right out of the gate, like their VP of sales, their VP of marketing. Like as a founder, I didn't hire my first employee in Spudsy until I was doing $5 million in revenue annually. I truly believe that buyers believe in founders and they believe in their founder story. And like founders can get a lot farther than they think they can with the right sounding board, which is one of the reasons why I created Shelf Made as well. But those are a couple things that I can think of like biggest struggles and pain points I'm seeing now.
Yeah, no, that actually is a really good point, especially that piece tied to fundraising and raising money. And David, one question I'll kind of pose to you, working with the books of a lot of these brands as they gear up for things like board meetings, fundraisers, etc. We'd love to get your thoughts on how, things like deductions and chargebacks and how they kind of frame into the overall books as brands gear up for things like capital raises, board meetings, etc.
Yeah, I think so. Right off the bat, it's always looking at net revenue. How much of your top line, or if top line is the right word, but what percentage of your revenue are you actually collecting? Where is that trade spend going? I think it's very important to have that understood and analyzed at all times. Another area we like to focus is on planned spend versus actual, and that's an important metric. One is, what is your internal discipline? Like, do you have the appropriate data making these estimates? And two is understanding the second half of the equation, what actually happened, explaining the story, being able to piece together how and why it occurred. And three is always uplift. What does a promotion result in? And that's always that's as old as time. But those are the big three areas. And then from there, I'm happy to take a deep dive into the OpEx and the other areas, but those are the big three off the bat.
No, that makes complete sense. And even being on the tech side, a lot of these things I've had to kind of like gear up for our capital raises, etc. Um, kind of yeah, transitioning a little bit. I guess Ashley, one question for you, maybe in building your last brand, etc. Was there ever a time where you as a founder had to kind of deep dive and investigate something like a very large deduction or chargeback and kind of go deep into something in the back office that may have impacted growth and would love to just hear, you know, maybe a story kind of tied to that and how it impacted the P&L and like, if you had to do it again, maybe what any learnings would be.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's some retailers and distributors that are a little bit sneakier than others. But I mean, I have uncovered hundreds of thousands of dollars in deductions like that a human found for me. So like I couldn't imagine, like I said, these companies now starting in 2025 and 2026, they're lucky because they can implement this right away. I started Spudsy in 2018, but the amount of money I have found in deductions has been hundreds of thousands of dollars insane by one human
Wow, no, that's incredible. And yeah,
through
just
unifying KP.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that.
You have to look at them because like I mean damaged cases that they charge you back on like these little item codes that you don't understand, right? Then you have to go to a key and type in that item code. Like it really is a tedious process that I don't think was created for a human to do.
Yeah, and kind of double clicking to that, one of the things you mentioned earlier in the statement is for brands starting and scaling in 2025 and 2026, it seems like things could be done differently and just all the impact you saw, even with the human. I guess if you had to do it again, how do you kind of think about building out maybe the deductions arm or like the finance arm for a business in 2025 going into 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just implement these things from day one because there is so much technology out there. And I mean, David said it himself, there like AI could basically do anything. So why would you not at least double check it with AI or have like a program in place that could help the human to do their job? I'm not saying like delete the human, but you have to use AI now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It,
Definitely.
it's a
And
it's
yeah.
it's a secret language. We see
It
these
is.
remittances with these codes, and it's like, okay, I know Whole Food. It took me a couple of years to learn Whole Foods, but it's just amazing how in the dark we all are on these codes and the reasons, how and why. And it's why can't it be transparent? So having these tools like a better scan and comb through these codes and give you that clear opportunity to either accept or reject. I mean, that's a game changer.
I mean, honestly, I feel like they don't even know what some of the codes mean because you ask and they're like, what code? Like, we've never seen this code. So it really is like a secret language.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, being deep in the weeds. And I guess a big part of how Glimso was designed was just learning about all of the obscurity in these codes on a per distributor and retail basis and how each of that's fragmented. And for a fast-growing brand, maybe you start out with KeHE and Unify, and you have to learn all of those codes. But then as the business is growing, you have to, you expand into Target or Walmart, and it's a completely new set of codes. And that also is really hard to scale with a human having to learn each of those codes every single time. And, kind of tying into this, one poll that we just dropped in the audience is kind of tied to the biggest financial pain point today. And, there's a couple of options, but I'd love to ask you, David, that same question right now in terms of where unnecessary time is spent, or maybe the biggest financial pain point that your team kind of does manually. Well, I would love to learn in terms of what you think some of the biggest pain points are.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying pain point because everything here needs to be dealt with. But the reality is the matching payments to invoices and gathering documents, that's where the time and resources is being put into play. Being able to actually analyze and submit disputes like that takes a lot of time and effort without a tool in place that can compile it. So that naturally right there, the time and effort that goes into just compiling, if that time can be brought back and you could focus on the retailer claims, submitting disputes, and tracking payments, that would just completely redesign the trade spend process.
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a ton of sense. And, kind of flipping the narrative a little bit. Obviously, I am an AI founder, so I'm definitely biased towards the impacts of AI, but maybe I'll start with you, Ashley. Would love to understand right now with your knowledge of AI, what would you trust AI to completely take over and automate versus what a human should still review?
I mean, to be honest with you, I trust AI with my life. So my most recent thing is I think it's going to eliminate everything. I really do. Most recently, like I've basically eliminated a lot of my attorneys. Like I would put contracts through AI. I would double check them with my attorneys, and my attorneys had no suggestions. So I really feel like it's limitless what it could do. And I mean, I see it pretty much taking over everything.
No, that that makes complete sense. And David, I'll kind of ask you the same question as well.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I'll be the CPA and former auditor in the room. I don't trust anything. coming through AI. But what I do is I allow it to take the first crack at something. I allow it to put it into a format where I can understand and digest it. And ultimately, I take ownership and accountability of it. So anything AI produces at any point of my work, I assume 100% responsibility for, and I'm comfortable doing it. So, it may not just, I may not click and let it go out the door, but my goodness, the time it saves, I can put some brief thoughts on paper, use AI to help kind of smooth it out. And then I go behind and kind of be more me. And I could do that in 30 minutes compared to hours.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like I would never, I guess, trust it 100% to like set it out in the world, but like lay the groundwork, write my contract, and then have the expert do the final stamp of approval is, I mean, I use it for everything regarding that.
No, that makes complete sense. And honestly, very similar to how we kind of think about things at Glimpse, where, just a quick example. I think last week we had, we detected and won back a $30,000 invalid slotting charge with one of the retailers that's been mentioned today for one of our clients. And it was one of those things where what AI was really good for was a lot of the automation of pulling in the deductions, understanding what the deduction was, finding the invalid, maybe, or sorry, in the internal documentation, and filing the claim, but a human was still very important in the process of actually escalating the charge and getting it all the way till repayment. And I think this slide that's on the screen is a really good example of where, we think AI is today is in a lot of the steps, maybe in the process of automation. So like pulling in data or going into these different retailer portals or taking a PDF and turning into something that can actually be used, that 70% of labor time, is something that we think today AI can do a really good job with. But having that human in the loop and the expertise makes it makes it extremely valuable to get the end outcome. And kind of tying back to the theme of this webinar, it's what we kind of encourage everyone in the audience to be thinking about, which is right now there's probably a lot of low-hanging fruit of automation and process that AI can be really good for in terms of implementing today. So at Glimpse, that's things like, pulling in deductions from the different retailer portals or extracting out data from PDFs or, finding a bill of lading for a shortage, etc. But then a human and someone that, knows context on the business or can be trusted is really important for things like reaching out to your buyer, adding in that human connection for a really large deduction or anything like that. And where we kind of see, as I've been talking to large organizations, the time lens to kind of think about is AI between now and 2030 and how things will evolve in the next 5 years. And honestly, we don't really know what's going to happen. Just year over year,
Very.
AI is just getting so much different. Yeah, and something that the reason that this webinar is focused on just going into 2026 is because, we can do this in a year and the technology might be completely different. Um, yeah, and kind of tying to this, we kind of mentioned some of the things throughout where, in the back office where AI can be useful. And maybe first, David, I'll kind of hand it to you to talk a little bit about the cash application and deductions process today. And I know you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I'd love to go a little bit deeper into some of the areas where you're starting to already think about automation. And would love to kind of tie that back to some of the recommendations that I and the Glimpse team have for everyone in the audience in terms of how 20% profit margins can occur with automation in 2026.
Yeah, so I mean, in its current form, as I've mentioned earlier, it's brutal. Right? It's manual, it's intimate. You go on record by record, pile and pull together. Where the future of AI is going to occur, it's going to be able to pull the backup. It can come through an inbox. Come through a key or a Unify login. It can go in and get all this information and put it into a single source or a single document so that exactly that information is available and you can get that, validate or reject. hope I answered your question. You had a couple parts there. I want to make sure I get it all.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good start. And kind of I guess the broader question I'd love to ask is if these processes were all automated with I think we have two different perspectives in the room about how that can be useful for a business. But if we could fully automate the deductions process and the cash application process, like what would you guys advise brands to reallocate that time and spend towards um, seeing all of the different brands that you guys have built, worked with, etc.
Fight. Use the time to fight everything. Understand what the credit limits are for, understand whether or not they're valid, and take that time to dispute because they're sitting out there and time and resources. There's only so many hours in a day. I mean, we see incorrect promos, we see early pay discounts well outside the window. We see recalls without support, damages without evidence, and that's what I would say is fight.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of these early stage brands get that they can dispute these claims too. I think that's like a learning lesson in itself because like with my first brand, I didn't. You're just like, I need this distributor to get me to this retailer. And you kind of just take what they give you. I think now there's more awareness around it and like fighting them and disputing them. But I agree. I feel like there's a lot of money like sitting on the table, especially if you're a brand doing multi-million dollar in sales a year. There's money out there that you could fight back for.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
interesting because as part of like the bill pay process, and I won't go too far off script, but we see invoices get rejected all the time, like incorrect billing, a marketing campaign wasn't met, and they get rejected and they get pushed back. You have to create the tools of confidence to know that if you get something from a distributor or retailer, you can push back. You don't have to accept that. It's not their word versus yours. Everybody has equal footing.
And as a founder, I feel like sometimes it's hard to do that because you're like, I don't want to disrupt the relationship. Like you feel like you're at the mercy of the buyer. But I totally agree. Like push back. Push back. The worst that they can say is no or direct you somewhere else. But like I would definitely push back.
Just don't do 100% rejection. They pick up on that pretty quick. We've seen that.
Yeah, definitely. There has to be some intelligence in that process.
They don't like that.
And I guess a question for both of you as well, and just, as we sort of slowly move to Q&A over the next couple of minutes, but one thing I'd love to understand is, we've spent a lot of time obviously talking about the deductions process, the trade process, etc., but just even instilling AI into the culture of a business, what advice do you guys have to, sort of introduce for a lot of the folks here where there might be no AI in their business today? What advice do you kind of have to start even thinking about AI? Maybe like low-hanging fruit, early ways to adopt AI, etc.
I mean, I would say use AI as your VP of sales, use AI as your VP of marketing. Like, hey, I'm entering 500 Whole Foods stores. What's the best way for me to support this from a marketing perspective? Like, AI will tell you and it will give you ideas. And honestly, a lot of them are spot on. So I would use AI in the same way that you use your team members. And like David said, like, obviously there's a human aspect to it. Like, where you can double check like the work with your broker or your fractional or your team person. But I use AI today just the same way that I use my employees to get ideas for how to do sales and marketing campaigns in stores. Same with online.
Yeah, and I think from my standpoint, I'm real big on crawl before you walk and walk before you run. I think I get we work with a lot of accounting softwares and tools where it's agents, it's these large complex models, and I'll meet with my companies or I work with some team members, and I say, do you use transcripts in your meetings? Like, do you put on Copilot as part of that? Like, start there. Like, don't chase that big AI kind of endpoint, start with your day to day. I mean, I could tell you, for example, just by putting transcripts on and email recaps, I could take 20% admin time off my plate each week. So that's where I'm pushing our companies and teams. Start small, get familiar, and then we can work our way upstream to ultimately some of these larger or more automated processes.
Yeah, definitely. I think, even for me, just starting to use like a chat GPT every single day in my day to day was sort of the biggest way to start getting introduced to AI and start instilling that within the team. And we've actually even set like an internal KPI around AI usage and rewarding AI usage within the company to make sure that we're as efficient as possible. And that's something culturally that we've seen work quite well. Cool. And then, before kind of opening things up to Q&A with the audience, kind of quickly wanted to talk through how the Glimpse system works today and how we're helping brands automate a lot of the deductions back office process with AI, just to help visualize, how we think about things because, Glimpse can help impact the deductions process, but this type of framework can be applied in all types of parts of the business, the accounts payable side, the bill pay side, financial workflows, operations, etc. So in terms of how Glimpse works today, what we've basically done is kind of take some of the lowest hanging fruits of the deductions process and introduce automation to allow for expertise to maximize value. So for example, we have AI agents that go into each of the different retailer portals and pull in all new deductions and also request backups. And this allows for saving, anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a week for folks that just have to log into every single different portal and pull all new deductions that might come in. And this is something that scales with you as your business grows. It's not something that will plateau or stay small, etc. And then in our centralized system, we then pull out the relevant details from these deductions. So, you know, when was the invoice date? What type of deduction is it, etc. And then the other thing to break down silos across teams is we ingest all these different internal sources of data. So bill of ladings, promotional calendars, etc., and use AI to then identify when a deduction is invalid or valid. And when it's invalid, we'll actually go ahead and submit the claim on your behalf. And then we have a deductions expert that can follow up until repayment. And on the other end, we can draft credit memos and actually help automate that cash application process to help close the books even faster. And this is a really good example, I think, of how AI can be useful for your business in 2026 because one, it drives direct impact to the bottom line, so helping recoup that 3 to 5% in invalid deductions, but also introducing that 70% labor optimization by reducing a lot of the low-hanging fruit tasks and increasing where subject matter expertise can focus on, and also reinvesting that labor time into things like opening new doors, marketing, checking and being more strategic about where deductions are even coming from and trade spend, etc. And with this, would love to kind of open up the floor for questions from the audience. We can kind of use the remaining time to answer any questions while we have all the panelists in the room. Cool. So feel free to use the chat and then we can kind of reframe the questions and answer it for the audience. And I think we had a couple of questions come in throughout the session, so we can address those initially. Cool. So one of the questions that came in the audience earlier was the security of using AI with financial data. And one of the things, yeah, so I guess security of using AI with financial data. I have some thoughts, but maybe if David, you want to start here?
If you're not paying for it, it's probably not secure. So if you're getting anything free, you have to be very mindful of anything you plug into that's out there, whether or not it's accessible to the public or that's available to whoever runs these softwares. So you need enterprise level with clear security protocols if you're going to be putting financial data, which we here at Sickich, we're in a fully secure environment with Copilot. Otherwise, people put no trust or reliance on it.
Definitely. Ashley, did you have any thoughts on this question?
You guys are the AI experts on this, but yeah, I mean, I'm still cautious of what I put in there. So I mean, putting my financials and stuff in there would scare me as well, like dumping it into a chat GPT. But again, I'm not the expert in this.
Yeah, definitely. And The only thing I'd sort of add in here is this is a great example of when it makes sense to kind of use a service provider instead of going directly to one of the models. So, for example, at Glimpse, we partition every customer's data um, in their own separate, effectively data buckets to keep it sort of secure and private on a brand by brand basis. Where and that allows everything to kind of be trained only within a brand's data to provide that security and that enterprise level security as well. So it's usually also one of the pros in using a service provider that's AI focused as opposed to going directly into the models. And I think it depends on the type of data that you kind of use. Cool. It looks like another question came in. As a service provider, we have a major challenge in that our customers almost always automatically default that we did something wrong when they get chargebacks and make us fight them. They're not acting as partners in that moment and seem afraid of the buyers. How do we educate and get past this? I'm sure all three of us have slight perspectives here from having exposure to these in different ways, but maybe Ashley, I know, sorry, I think she'll join in a second. Maybe David, if you want to start in terms of working as partners and, answering this question with your perspectives.
That's a tough one. There's no easy answer on that. I think you have to go remittance by remittance, and you have. I mean, really, I would start with material um, credits, any material trade spend, and start there and make a clear case to show, hey, we don't have the support, and pull up your records, show what records you have, show any correspondence between you, distributor, and retailer, saying, hey, we do not have evidence. I mean, that's the best thing you could do. Unfortunately, if a customer isn't willing to kind of go through the process, understand trade spend themselves, you have to make your own case to prove why and how you did what you did. And going back to a glimpse plug, they had something like this, they would have that better visibility and could better understand how and where this is happening.
Definitely. Kind of chiming off of that, the main thing that I would recommend is having strong evidence and being willing to work with your buyer. I think, it comes down to transparency. It's easy to see a really large charge and just get immediately afraid and reactionary, but by having clear-cut evidence of when it is invalid, it strengthens the case and provides full transparency into why the chargeback exists in the first place. And by having a system like Glimpse, it also provides just transparency into all of your deduction spend and the insights into how to prevent these in the future, which I think is the ultimate goal with these chargebacks in the first place. And yeah, this tied to your next question, Ruben, tied to hard goods and not just food. This is every single retail supplier that sells in retail, agnostic of category. Some of these supply chain short shipments or compliance deductions exist for every single type of brand. And Glimpse also works with every category of brand as well. Cool.
No, but gosh, but what's
Okay.
crazy, excuse me, like you work with some of these distributors. I mean, we're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars. A 50K credit, that's a rounding error. That doesn't even exist in their books. And I'm not speaking ill of that. I'm not saying they're not diligent to an extent, but believe me, that just gets lost. So don't just assume because they're a big, large organization that they may not have put the time or resources into that credit memo.
Definitely. Definitely. I think that's one of the most exciting opportunities about having AI in the back office is the fact that these rounding errors, they add up as well. And, you can provide material impact to the bottom line just by having AI go on autopilot to compile a lot of these smaller charges, win money back, etc. So, definitely, that makes complete sense. I think there's one more question. If does Glimpse work with Walmart? Yes, we do work with Walmart. So if you're a brand in the audience that uses Walmart, I would be happy to chat. Cool. But it looks like those were sort of the main questions that kind of came in. We can go ahead and wrap up here. A big thank you to our panelists, David and Ashley. And on this last slide, we at Glimpse are offering a free 30 days trial by using this link. So scan that QR code. We will get you set up with our promo. And yeah, we'd be happy to chat with any brands that are looking to introduce AI into their back office. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.